And let me admit everyone else. And let me share that. Okay.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Milford Planning and Zoning Board Subcommittee, the Regulation Subcommittee, on the 28th of February. And we'll call the meeting to order. And Meg, if you would please call the roll.
Mr. Collegian,
Present.
Mr. Macchio,
Here.
Mr. Sadi,
Present.
Mr. Zaharidis. Did Mark join us? No. And Chairman Quish.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Topic for discussion is affordable housing. And we do have David Fink from South Central Regional Council of Governments with us as a housing policy consultant. Before we turn this over to Mr. Fink, we'd just like to say, just to regroup on this, is that we do not have our 10% in Milford, which is a requirement to avoid developers from going outside our specific zoning regulations. So we are tasked as a group with coming up with ideas to support affordable housing and support it in a way, in a manner that is conducive to the areas in which they're built. We have a problem with single-family home neighborhoods ending up with a dozen or so apartments, and it seems that is not really fulfilling the need, number one, nor the direction of the state when they task us with coming up with solutions. So David will come in, and I would ask David if you have some opening remarks, and however you feel you want to proceed. And at a certain point, I would ask that you just allow the members to just raise a hand and communicate, just to let the public know this is a meeting of the subcommittee. The subcommittee members and the staff and our guest David Fink are the only ones that will be permitted to speak or contribute. Other than that, you're welcome to listen, and you can keep your own notes and send them to David Sulkus, the city planner, and he can then inform the rest of the full board, as well as this board, with your questions or comments. With that, David, if there's anything you'd just like to say before we introduce David.
No, you did a great job with Dave's introduction.
Okay. Mr. Fink, thank you for joining us.
Sure. Well, thanks for inviting me. I wasn't exactly sure what you'd want me to say, and I'm obviously happy to answer any questions that you have, and we can go there. I would just at the outset say that you guys are to be commended for even having this session. We are at SCROG offering opportunities to meet with zoning commissions and with towns at large meetings. In some cases, towns are opting for, if you can imagine, a joint meeting of the zoning board and the school board and the board of selectmen or the town council, because sometimes it's really important to get all of them in the room at the same time, because what they do affects the others. But I think it's really important for you to consider this. And David knows this, so I'm not looking to flatter all of you, but because he's heard me say this, that I commend zoning boards and zoning commissioners, because I know I've probably been to more zoning board meetings than maybe anyone in the history of Connecticut, with the possible exception of some developers' lawyers. And I know that you meet once or twice a month, sometimes into the wee hours, and you get paid nothing to do it. And the only thing you get in return sometimes is somebody accosting you in aisle 8 of the Stop and Shop, asking you, why the hell did you approve that? Or they wag their fingers at you, and it's not an easy job. I know that. Having said that, and I guess it's the reason why you asked me tonight, is that zoning boards' roles have kind of changed a little bit because it's kind of a combination of the fact that we haven't created much housing supply as a state for almost 2 decades. We've had demographic change in the interim. And so there's a huge need for more supply and not exactly the supply that towns already have. A couple of numbers for you just to kind of understand where you're at. We had a huge run up in single family home prices, as you probably know, since the beginning of the pandemic. Statewide, a little less than 60%, 60%. What that did was it drove a lot of people in the home buying market who were at the lower end of the income spectrum into the rental market. And that drove up demand for rentals. And so rental prices have gone up 20% since the beginning of the pandemic. And the ripple effect there has been that homelessness has increased 13% in the last year because people have been pushed out of the homes that they used to rent because they're evicted and they can't afford new places. So, we have a problem. I mean, and the issue is, can you create supply and where do you do it? As I think you pointed out, where people, neighbors, and neighborhoods are not going to freak out about it. And I once asked Mike Santoro at the Department of Housing, what municipality in the state has had more 830G developments or proposals than any other? And I don't know if you'll be happy to know or unhappy to know that he said Milford, and that is in part a testament to what a great city it is and the services it provides and all the great things that happen there, and its location, on the way to New York, and a lot of people want to live there. So the question then becomes, okay, what are you going to do now? What can you do? And I can tell you that what other towns are doing. I never tell a town what to do, but I will tell you what other towns are doing, and they are reviewing their zoning ordinances. They are looking for where they can zone for more density, so that a developer can spread his land cost over more units. They are trying to in the best way they can to speed up the process to make it easier for developers to move, and that may be kind of antithetical to what the people in Milford want. They may want sequential approvals from the different boards and commissions because they want time to look at this. Developers don't want that. Developers want concurrent approvals because they want to know, we're going to get a thumbs up or a thumbs down. But if you want to attract developers, they're not going to go to a place where they have to spend a lot of money on engineering and lawyers' fees and then not knowing down the line whether they're ultimately going to be allowed or be blocked from doing this. So again, that's something to think about. The more interesting things that towns are doing is, and again, I'm not sure it's your job in a de jure way, but maybe in a de facto way it is, to kind of understand that you're not just there to sit as judge and jury when a developer comes in. It may be that you have to be a little more proactive in creating the housing you need. By that I mean, and like I said, it's not really your job. I'm not sure it's Dave Sulkas's job as the planner. It may be more the case in cities where it's the economic development director's job or the community development director's job or the housing authority, the redevelopment authority. But there are people in town who someone needs to own housing creation in the town. And
well, I think, David, I think what we're embracing here in Milford is that whether it is a specific task, we look at it as like a specific opportunity, right? So we do have the ability and the power to create new regulations
Right.
around affordable housing, and we can integrate it in many different zones. We have maybe 6 different commercial design districts, and it's fairly complicated mix of the way we are broken up now. And I think primarily we're hoping to find from you some best practice or some point us in a direction. Where has it been successful? I mean, we can obviously, as you know, we can change regulations. We can create new regulations, and we can, put some carrot in front of developers, as well as we can put a stick behind them. So, what we don't really have a grasp on is, what have you seen that's successful?
Well,
What have other cities done that seems to have made sense? I mean, it may not come to fruition yet, but what seems to make sense to you? And you've seen a lot more than we have, I'm sure.
yeah. Well, I mean, if I had to name one town in the state that has done it the best, it's Fairfield. And I don't know, Dave, whether you know Mark Barnhart in Fairfield or any of you do, but Mark Barnhart is the Community and Economic Development Director in Fairfield. He gets up every day deciding, knowing that his job is to create housing in the town. He's the one who, it's now, I think, probably 16 or 17 years ago, created an affordable housing committee in the town. And was that important? Well, not really. I mean, they weren't deputized to be officials, but they became a corpus of people in town who understood housing creation, why that was important, and where to do it. So, like I said, people don't get upset about it. And that ultimately led to discussions in town and a greater understanding. And they passed an inclusionary zoning regulation in Fairfield.
What's that? What's the inclusionary zoning regulation?
What is it? It's a regulation that says that for any development, it could be of any size. In Fairfield, it's 10 units or more. A certain percentage of the units have to be income restricted. Now, is that Guilford just created one. There are a few around the state. So let me talk a little bit about inclusionary zoning regulations. They are a way to tell a developer, in effect, that if you want to build in our town, we'll let you, but you have to create you make a certain percentage of those units income restricted at whatever income level you want. Affordable to someone at 80% of median income, 60%, 50%, whatever you want to do. They don't work. They do not work in towns where the market rate per unit is going to be too low, because a builder, as you know, has to buy the piece of land. And then if he puts 1 unit on it, that 1 unit, the land cost for that land is for that 1 unit. But if you let him put 10 or 20 units on that acre, he spreads the cost of that acre over 10 or 20 units. So it's how much density you allow. And then you say to him, okay, and if you're going to do 20 units, 20% of those, 4 of the 20 units have to be income restricted. They have to be priced affordable for someone at whatever level you decide, 80, 60% of median income. Like I said, that can be counterproductive, because as you know about Milford, I certainly know it in my town, West Hartford, there's not one housing market. There's about 5 different housing markets in West Hartford. And you probably know that there are different neighborhoods and parts of town where, in certain parts of town, if you told the developer that if you create 20 units, 4 of them have to be income restricted, he could do it. He'll make plenty of money on the 16 market rate units, and he'll be able to eat whatever costs he incurs on those 4 income restricted units. And now you get 4 income restricted units and 16 market rate units, and you've accomplished something. But there probably are other parts of town where if you told him that he had to make 4 of the 20 units income restricted, he says, screw it, I'm not coming. because I can't make that deal work. I can't make enough on the market rate units to cover my costs on the affordable units. So again, what did Fairfield do? They did not make it townwide. They made it in areas near their rail stations. Now, you guys have one, if I'm not incorrect. They have three. And so they created districts around their rail stations that said, if you build housing within, I don't know what it is, you can talk to Mark. He's a wonderful guy and he'll help you out. If you create housing of 10 units or more within, I think it's a half a mile of the rail station, you have to make, I think they put it at 12% of the units have to be income restricted. And they've created some housing there. And what's the real benefit of it? It's the income restricted units. It's second, modest market rate units near transit, which is really very valuable, as you know, because I don't know if you know about this, Dave probably does, but Reconstructing America did a study 20 years ago, and it stands up that said, the average household spends 32% of their income on housing and 19% on transportation. But if you live within a half a mile of a rail station, that 19% goes down to 9%. So you're making it affordable for people. Those people who live within walking distance of the station, they may have to have a car, but they don't have to use it all the time. They pay less for insurance. They pay less for gas. They pay less for maintenance. And you've created something of value by creating housing near the station. And for a worker, especially a lower income worker, who can live in one of those income restricted units, being near the station allows them to get to jobs, training, healthcare, schools. So inclusionary zoning ordinances are a good idea if it's required in an area where the developer can make enough money on the market rate units to cover any costs he has to eat on the income restricted units. Like I said, there are other ways to do it. Guilford just created an ordinance that has two other provisions in it. It says to a developer, if you don't want to put the income restricted units on that site with the market rate units, because maybe that'll, people won't want to rent or buy the market rate units, you can put it in another location. That to me is kind of a pain in the ass because he's got to find another location and, build there. So I'm not sure that's a great idea, but towns do it. A third option is you give the developer an opt-out fee where he has to pay Milford a certain amount of money for all the income restricted units he's required to create, but doesn't. So, and again, that's an option, and that can go into a fund which the city can use to subsidize other developments. Again, it's not a perfect solution because a lot of towns, Stamford found this out about 25 years ago, unless you keep an eye on construction costs and increase the cost of what they call an in lieu of fee, in other words, you got to stay on top of that. The in lieu of fee, if you leave it where it was the day you enacted it, it doesn't pay for a lot of new units. It's not enough. But it's an option, and it's something you can, think about. So that's something you can do. Another thing you can do is make, like I said, life easier for developers. You can move the process along faster. You can reduce, in other words, like I said, some towns require sequential development, the Wetlands Board and the Planning Commission and the Zoning Commission, and then whoever else has to approve it. And, the guy says, shit, I'm not going to go through like 5 months of approvals and spend all this money on lawyers' fees and engineering fees, and I don't even know if I'm going to get approved. You got to, if you do it all at once, he knows at least up or down, he gets an answer quickly. There are administrative approvals. I know a guy we had today at the Housing Work Group meeting at Scrog just got an administrative approval on inland wetlands. He had no wetlands on the property he was building on. It wasn't an issue. He shouldn't have had to go to a hearing and hire a lawyer and engineer to come and sit there and spend $6,000 or $7,000 for that. So he said, look, I got no wetlands, just give me an administrative approval. And they said, okay. And now he's going to build because he didn't, the point is that for a city like Milford, you're not a big city like New York or Boston, so you're not going to build, or very seldom are you going to have locations where you're going to build 200, 300, 400 units. If you allow someone to come in and he's going to build 40, 50, 60 units at a time, right? Because that's going to be to scale to fit the surroundings of the neighborhood. Those guys are home builders. They're not big developers like Beacon or Penrose or some of these others. So they don't have deep pockets and they can't afford to spend a lot of money on engineering fees and lawyers' fees without guarantee that they're going to get approval. So if you want the housing built, you got to make it easier for the developer, and which is generally going to be a home builder. I mean, some of these home builders have gotten religion in the last few years. For 40 years in this state, they used the same set of blueprints, and they built a lot of colonials that were 2,000 and 3,000 and 4,000 square feet, and a lot of them have changed. They've got a new set of blueprints, and they're ready to build townhomes. I mean, Dave couldn't make it to our meeting today. We had 3 developers who want to build in the Scrog region. They're fantastic. I wouldn't have brought them to the meeting today. What they have built is beautiful. They're single entry, individual entry duplexes and townhomes, and they're gorgeous, and they fit the surroundings anywhere. And I would recommend them to any town. They know how to do this, but they're not big shots. They're not big companies. You got to make it easier for them to do it. Now, again, I don't want to get too touchy-feely here, but here's another thing that you may want to be thinking about. And this goes back to what I said about zoning commissions. I know what happens because I've seen it at zoning commissions. Have people come, and it doesn't matter how good this proposed development is, they come and scream because they think, especially if you're going to create rentals or, God forbid, income restricted rentals for people at 60 or 80% the median income, they believe that the people who are going to live in those rentals are the Crips and the Bloods, and they're going to beat them up and steal their stuff and cause crime. Okay. Now, that's not true, but don't get me wrong. I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I understand why people freak out about that. I get it. Because as you know, probably even better than me, when people buy their home, it's the biggest check they've ever written. And everything is tied up in that home. Their retirement, their kids' education, their family's security. So it's not irrational for them to worry who's moving in down the block. And that's why they get up at your hearing and scream bloody murder and wag their finger at you and tell you, don't approve this. They're wrong, and we can go through that if you want. They're wrong about school enrollments going up and crime going up and property values going down. That's all bullshit, and there's plenty of research to show that that's not true. But like I said, I don't blame people for worrying about that.
No, and I get that too, and we all do. We've all seen it,
Right.
and
But the issue for you, I just want to finish my point. The issue for you is that you got to have people in town who will also come to that hearing and say, that's not true. And the issue for you is that all of you guys have to understand the research and politely tell those people, we care as much about Milford as you do, and we would not allow people to come and ruin your neighborhood. And here's what the research says. So, a lot of commissions now are learning about what the research shows so they can disabuse people of, the misconceptions that they have. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine. I just want to thank you for that. And again, some good things for us to look at what Fairfield's doing, look at what Guilford is doing, and, find some best practices. Again, we understand pretty fully on where we are. We've seen it. It's come in front of the board over and over. And and we have some opportunity in front of us to look at areas of Milford where we can maybe incentivize some affordability in any in any and all developments. And again, whether it's 10 units or 6 units or whatever, these are things we're going to think about and discuss. And maybe we'll come back and find from you what you found as being effective and not effective. But right now, I'd just like to open it up for the members to ask questions of David, either David, or make comments to point us in a direction of where we should, as a committee, be, looking to get some other info. Also, one thing I do want to bring up before we go to that is that I think it's the intention of to, instead of having a regulation subcommittee like we have for the last few years, is to have either every meeting or every other meeting have on the agenda a full group discussion on either pending, anybody wants to make a recommendation of a new regulation, or discussion of regulations that are in front of us. It seems that we had a lot of interest in getting on the subcommittee, and then we were confronted with the problem of what if it's a quorum. So I think it might have been you, Mark, who had the light bulb that went off over your head that said, why don't we just do it as the full committee and have it on the agenda to have, part of the fun for me, and I think the passion is to try to make Milford as good as it can be, make it better, and have some input, not just approving CAMs, but be able to direct the future of Milford. That's why we ran for office, why we stay on the board over and over again, is to try to, just for the better good of Milford. And I think that Mark's recommendation was a good one, that we should have it be the whole committee that looks at these things. So I'd asked David to go to the city attorney to make sure that that's something that he feels that as long as we have it on the agenda with some specifics, that we can do it. And I think it'll be a good thing in general. And then we may ask David to come back again in front of the entire board. But so a couple things I'd like to open up to anybody who would like to comment or ask David specific questions. Just speak out. You don't need
Mr. Chairman Quish, Bob Sadie, if I can speak.
Please do.
Thank you very much. Dave, you don't remember me, but I was one of your bus riders on the tour between Wallingford and Milford. I've been representing Milford in our regional council for 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to meet you for the first time. And I hopefully did a good job in explaining the difference between the Wallingford process and what happened in Milford. One was where everybody was helpful in Wallingford, and where obviously Milford was very controversial and confrontation. That being said, I want to thank you for that part of it, but I do have the specific question on the issue of the Fairfield regulations. You pointed out, have only one train station. We probably don't have much property around it that has not been developed. But how successful has that Fairfield proposal or amendment to the regulation? How's it been working in effect, if you know?
Very. I mean, they've created a lot of units around the station. Next time, when you take Metro North down to the city or Stamford, look at particularly the Fairfield Metro station. That's where they've done most of the work there, and they've created several hundred units. Mark can give you the full blow by blow and the numbers. And I would encourage you to have him before you, because he's way smarter than I am, and I would clone Mark if I could. He just is terrific, but it's been quite successful.
And thank you very much for that. And I think it's a good point. The last question I have for you, and it's in between our last regular board meeting, there was an article that came out of Hartford relating to New Haven's development. And development to come to the issue of affordable housing was giving a substantial tax credit. It appeared to be, however, to be only industrial buildings or industrial zones. Do you have knowledge of that? If you do, could you comment a little bit about that?
I don't know specifically, but generically I can tell you, I mean, Hartford has done, I'm not as familiar with New Haven. Hartford has converted a lot of office buildings to housing in the downtown. There's an advantage to that because the density is already there. The building's built. And the problem sometimes is that the footprint of the building and the design of the building and where the water pipes and the sewage pipes and the bathrooms and everything are, doesn't necessarily lend itself to a residential use. Plus, particularly in old mills, but sometimes in other, large factories or buildings, industrial sites, there's environmental remediation that's really too costly to make the whole project worth it. But like I said, the building's there already, and people have been looking at the density, so you're not going to get a lot of people saying, oh, we can't have a big building there. It's there. So it's possible to do that. I would point out to you something that Newington is doing now, Windsor Locks is doing, other towns are looking at now. And it resulted from, and David knows this, when we helped the towns in the region create their affordable housing plans 2 years ago, I drove around the region with our Boston consultant because he wanted to look at different areas in town. We drove down Bridgeport Avenue where you guys are and other parts of the different towns. And I said to him, has anybody talked about the idea of these old 50s and 60s era strip malls? I'm sure you have them in Milford. Every town has them where, it's 6 or 8 stores and, 3 or 4 of them the storefronts are vacant. And the question is, can anybody go up to the owner of that property and say, hey, when the leases are up on those 3 or 4 other stores, how about if we rezone this property, which tends to be in a really good place for multifamily housing because it's usually on a commercial strip or a bus line and not near a neighborhood. So you're not going to get people uptight and single family homes around it, and say, hey, how about if we rezone this for multifamily housing? Boston areas of COG, they call it the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, and it's way bigger than SCROG. SCROG is 15 towns. The Boston Area Metropolitan Planning Council is about 70-something towns. They did a study and they found if they converted just 10% of their old strip malls to housing, they could create 130,000 units of housing. Now, obviously, it's going to be on a lower scale here, but that's another thing you can think about besides converting old buildings. Look at that. Again, you got to have somebody in town whose job it is to approach the guy who owns that strip mall. Big cities have redevelopment authorities. I don't know if you guys do.
We don't.
But, right. But in a town like Fairfield, Mark is the guy who does that. He'll go up to a guy and say, we've looked at your property and we decided, a higher and better use for it might be, multifamily housing. Could you move your business? And the
David,
guy might say,
have you found that like a Boston Post Road, which goes from Boston to Miami, whatever,
Right.
is better situated to have a mixed use like that? We have had a couple of our commercial districts be commercial on street level and residential up above, or is it your instinct? And it's just your instinct. I'm not looking for anecdotal, what worked here or there, but your instinct is that solamente residential is better than a mixed use with some kind of a commercial on the first floor and residential on the next levels, next 2 or 3 levels, whatever it allows.
Right. Well, here's the issue on that, okay? And it's interesting that you brought that up, Jim, because some guy just went into Newington and proposed 274 units, and Newington turned them down and said they want some commercial on the first floor. So what's the developer thinking about there? He's thinking about, okay, that means I got to go to a different loan officer in the bank that just lent me the money to do the residential, because as you know, banks have different people making commercial loans and residential loans, and have to see if I can make that work. And will the rents that I get for that commercial space help me still pencil out the deal or not. And it's going to mean that I probably have to do, 20 or 25 fewer units in this thing. And so is it better? Yeah. I mean, believe me, I fantasize sometimes when somebody does 250 units, I'd like to open the bagel store downstairs. I'll make a lot of money, right? Because I got 250 people upstairs who will buy my bagels. It can work, but again, it gets a little more complicated, and it requires a developer who has done mixed use projects before. And again, it's also what else is in the neighborhood. If there's another bagel store the next block over, I don't know. So, to answer your question, all things being equal, yeah, be great to have a dry cleaner and a bar for a burger and a beer and a bagel store and a bodega downstairs. Great. But, it depends. And it depends on the location. What else is?
Yeah. No, I
Wow.
get that. No, that's a good answer, and I appreciate that, David. I think it is shed some light on whether we would pursue an overriding district-wide thing, or make it
Yeah.
be somewhat approved on a per basis, like a special permit basis. Whether it's a minimum of 20% or I don't know. But anyway, that's informative, and I appreciate that answer. Thank you much.
And I can
Thank you very
add,
much, Dave Fink.
I can add some information for New Haven to answer Bob's question as I stare out the window and see New Haven. No, New Haven has its 10%. So, a developer can't walk into New Haven and just create affordable housing and override zoning. But New Haven covets affordable housing because it's the right thing to do. So what they're doing is there are over 3,000 units under construction now in New Haven that have been approved and are under construction over the last 2 years. 3,000.
Affordable or just market rate?
Affordable. There's market rate in some of them, but a lot of them are also just affordable of different levels. And what the city has chosen to do is give them, temporary tax breaks. And the way they work in New Haven is you start at a lower tax rate, and then over time it increases to, the normal tax rate. But it's creating affordable housing, and it's not and it's not in the industrial areas, although there's some of that in there. It's downtown. It's in residential areas around downtown. It's all over town. It's along the commercial corridors. It's wherever developers find a piece of land and decide that it's worth it to them to do it. And it seems like there's an awful lot of developers who find whatever New Haven is doing very agreeable, and the city is willing to work with them to create this housing. And I mean, it's New Haven is one big construction zone. I had to go into downtown today between the office and home, and I don't think there was a street I could go down that wasn't being blocked by construction of one kind or another related to housing. And the amount of street life now all over the city and in the greater downtown area is just amazing. I mean, all day and all night. I mean, there are people out and shops are opening up. And to your point, Jim, I've observed that especially in downtown, it's commercial on the first floor. Whether the developer wanted to do it or that was part of the deal with the city, because they want to encourage.
It makes that walkable, bikeable, accessible. You want it to be vibrant, whatever. And I just love the description you had of New Haven. It's just like makes me proud of the Biden economy.
Yeah, it's
just had to throw that in. Come on, Sadie. Get your MAGA hat and put it away.
I think the issue though is you got to remember, for the developer, again, it may have changed in some of the banks that they have deals with or relationships with. It's always been a separate part of the bank.
Yeah.
And the developer is going to get a loan for that commercial space if the commercial lender thinks there is enough walkable traffic or there are enough people living upstairs, that, this is going to be a going concern, because if he gets less revenue for residences because he can put in 25 or 30 fewer units on the first floor, and he's got, businesses on the first floor who are going out of business because there's not enough demand, then the whole thing goes into the shitter, because he
Yeah, now that's a good point, and that's something that that's Greek to me. It'd be probably good to have a commercial lender come in and
right.
weigh in on what to understand where we are. I mean, Milford's a vibrant community, and it's a gold mine for the banks that come in here and
Yeah.
support it. So, but how much do you need, and how much do we need? Well, we need to get to 10%. So, how much are you willing to participate in getting us there? Then you win, we win. So I don't know who it is that we bring in, but it's just I never thought of it as two different lenders. I thought, you put your equity in, you have your stack. If you have some credits, if you're doing full on affordable, then you have your tax credits and stuff. But it looks to me like these 830Gs that we have are bootstrapping to the point where they get one lender, and they're smaller units, and the bigger ones, the 200-300 units that we've approved in the last 5 years, haven't been built. So, I mean, maybe it is complicated, and that's interesting, because we want to make it. We don't want to make it a laydown for the developers, because then we never get to 10%. That's where we've been for 20 years. We never get there, and so how do we get there? That's what we're trying to find out.
Yeah.
I don't.
I think the challenge for Milford is the city needs, most likely, to develop units, hundreds of units that are affordable, because no matter what tools we use now, what regulations we put into place, as long as there is market rate being built, we will never reach the 10%. It's a
Unless we look at what we talked about, is like everybody over 4 units has 10%, over 10 units, 15, whatever, some sliding scale. But I think you're right. I've always advocated for, like Stanford has and other cities have, is their own development authority, where they find underproducing land, blight, whatever they do, and they put together a quasi-public entity to develop the way we decide as elected officials, what we want, where we want it,
And just to make it clear, so you can have any regulations you want. You could regulate 30% or 40% what that developer builds is affordable, but 60% is still market rate. So that 10% level that you're trying to get at, you're never going to reach that 10% as long as there's always market rate, because that's a sliding scale based on the number of units.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're over 10, you're not going backwards. But
right, but we'll never get to the 10. That's
no, I know. You have to go forward. Like,
right,
yeah,
right.
I get
it. And Norwalk just developed, I think it's 100 units that the city did, and it's all affordable. It's all affordable.
Well, here's the issue with that. You can't expect somebody who's a for-profit builder to make all the units affordable. They're not in it to lose money, unless they can get the land for nothing.
Right.
I mean, they have 3 basic. They got land costs, labor costs, and material costs. Material costs have skyrocketed during the pandemic. Labor costs are high. Land costs, what you can do for a developer on land costs is give him more density and let him spread his land cost over more units. I don't know how high, your building code allows somebody to go, but Mark Twain said, invest in land because God's not creating anymore. Well, God's not creating any more land, but zoning commissions are, not horizontally, vertically, and so it depends. If you can give them more density and go up a little higher in the right locations where people are not going to be upset about it, that's where you can help the developer. If you can ask, if you can, that's the idea of putting it near transit. You don't have to require him to have as many parking spots, because people who live there, young singles and all that, they don't want to have a car. They want to go skiing on the weekend. They'll rent a car to go up to Vermont. So, and a lot of zoning commissions have relaxed their parking requirements. And because every piece of land that he devotes to parking is land he can't put a residence on, a unit on. So, I mean, there are
That's a
ways.
good point. That's a good point. And we talked about that, different areas, why not go up? Why not go up a little bit? Let him go up.
Well, but it's
Give
got
us,
to be in the
give
right
us
location.
solar, give us hempcrete, insulation, give us some carbon neutral stuff, give us some bells and whistles, give us some affordability. And you know what? We can add up, and I think that's smart on certain areas, whether it's the CDD districts, not the end of the world. I don't think so. It's a thought that we should be considering. Can you, David, share some links with, whether it's Fairfield or Guilford or David, if David Fink can't do it, if you could research on what they've done recently, just so we have a record of some of the stuff we talked about as being forward thinking or best practice, whatever. And
I
so we
can
can review it.
I can contact Fairfield. I know the planner and the assistant city planner. So getting the mark won't be an issue.
Okay, there you go. If we could just have that and put it in the minutes so that the public that are watching may be able to just go and research it, click into it. Because this minutes will be published and there are people from the public watching. So if they could just get access to some data that we've discussed, that'd be great. I'd appreciate it.
I have a question actually. What is our cost for not getting to 10%? Does the city get fined?
No, under the 830G law in the state, if less than 10% of your housing stock is considered affordable, which is to say that it's either deed restricted or otherwise guaranteed to remain affordable to people at 60 or 80% of median income. If you're under 10% of those kinds of units, a developer can come in, buy a piece of property, override whatever the zoning currently is, and it's the burden of proof is on the city to show that development will threaten public health or safety. And if the city can't show that, then the developer can just build what he or she wants. So it's a way for developers to override that local zoning.
We've seen a bunch of that, Mark, where we have what was a single family home with, whatever big piece of land, but in a residential neighborhood. And all of a sudden there's 8 or 12 apartments. And so I have a single family home on one side. My cousin has a single family house on the other side. And we always thought there'd be a single family house between us. Now there's 12 units. So this has happened in a dozen locations around Milford, and there's nothing we can do. And we have, attempted to create health and safety arguments and denied applications. And 100% of the ones we denied, we lost in court. Judge Berger, he's not there anymore. I don't know who the next judge is, but he's probably got the same, marching orders as the state regs have. I don't know.
Well, as someone who had to go to those court hearings, I will tell you that it's not just the health and safety, it's the fact that whatever the health and safety concerns are, those health and safety concerns have to outweigh the public need for having affordable housing.
And who decides that? Judge Berger.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, the courts do, because it's and that's why it goes,
outweighs what?
And it goes to a special and it goes to a special court that's set up for this, and that's why it's considered such a high priority need by the state and the courts, that it's a very, as our attorney has said multiple times to us, it's a very, very high bar that is very difficult to jump.
To answer your question, towns have responded to that in 2 different ways.
Okay.
The first way is what's become known as a friendly 830G, where a town will recognize, as Jim and David have pointed out, that they're likely to lose. The stats over the years have been that towns lose 2 out of 3 times. So rather than spend tens of thousands of dollars on legal fees, the town decides we're under 10%, we're likely to lose, let's work with the developer. And they negotiate with them and they get kind of what they want. Second way that towns have responded to that is to zone areas so that a developer now has a choice. He can come into town with an 830G and fight the town and spend 3 years in court. And he's got to pay money to lawyers just like the town does. Or he can come in and pay a little more for a property that's already zoned for the way he wants it and not fight the town. So towns in that way get the housing they might have gotten where they didn't want it, they get it where they want it. So that's why a town like Fairfield has created an inclusionary zoning ordinance around its train stations. They don't want the density in other parts of town, but they recognize it's more palatable politically, just as a practical matter, to put that near the train station. No one really gives a shit how high, how high the building goes there or how dense it is, because most people don't live there. So you're not messing up a neighborhood. Again, it's kind of, seize the day. Do you want to put it where you want it, or do you want the developer to put it where he wants it? And the problem for a town like Milford, and that's what I started off saying, why Mike Santoro at Department of Housing said that, he thinks Milford's probably gotten more 830G applications than any other municipality in the state, is because it's a great place to live. You have a great city. It's located in a great place. You got the beach, you got services, you got parking, you got everything. And so developers know that whatever they build, wherever they build it, they'll rent it out in about 15 minutes. And David can tell you that none of these places, none of these 830Gs, or none of the multifamily housing you built, there's no vacancies. So
they're leased before they're even built.
yeah. So the point being is make that work into your advantage.
Yeah.
Zone it where you want it, and people will buy it.
Follow that road. We're going to follow that road down. We're going to do a deeper dive on trying to put a carrot in front of developers to find the zones that we're going to think it through as a clan, and put it on the commercial corridor districts and have some mixed use. And we do have some areas where we've probably got close to 1,000 units market, on 830G. So 1,000 units is 300 affordable approved that aren't being built now. So why is that? Cost of lumber, cost of whatever, but we have Big Drive. We've got a bunch of other stuff that has already been approved over near West Shore Middle School. So the larger developments haven't been built. The smaller ones have. So it's going to take us a little bit of time to filter through it. And I appreciate your input, David. We're getting close to the hour. If anybody has anything that they'd want to add in or questions they want to ask, I'd appreciate that we get her done. And then, if not, I just, we have notes coming in from Meg, and thank you, Meg and David, for being here. And thank you, David Fink, for being here. And Brian, Mark, and Sadie, nutcase, Sadie. Oh, sorry about that. Did I say that out loud, or I just think it? But anyway, it's been very informative. Yeah, I have a lot to think about myself. And again, the goal is to just find best practice on what gets a city like Milford to be proactive and find where and how we want affordable housing built in order to meet that deadline, so we alleviate the need to have a single family neighborhood upended by a 12-unit subdivision on a single family lot, and so that's just anecdotal. That's the one I use, but we want, and I embrace affordable housing. And I just read something recently about Greenwich, who has some grant money in for affordable housing, and what they want to do in order to get the help for developers is for carbon neutral building, so like hempcrete panels or hemp insulation, so there is a way. Obviously, Greenwich has some more coin than a blue collar town like Milford, but you can support some carbon neutral or some sustainability goals at the same time. And that's always good too. So anyway, if anyone has any other closing thoughts or questions.
The only thing I'd say to you is that you can shop around for the developers you want, invite them to the city, and have them look around. Towns are doing that now. I invited 3 developers to the Sprague Housing Work Group meeting today. We had over 60 people at the meeting. And the reason I invited them is they're great developers. They do great work. It's beautiful. They manage their properties so the places look better now than when they were built 20 years ago. Those are the people who you want to come to town. They know what they're doing, and they'll build you something that will remain an asset in the community.
Wow. Now, did you invite them for an RFP on a specific piece of property, or just
Oh, I
check out
invited
our
them.
town?
I invited them to come to talk to. We have representatives of all the towns coming to the meetings. And
Oh, this was your Scrog meeting today.
correct.
Okay. Very cool. Well, I wanted to attend it virtually, but I couldn't, and I'll look forward to the video or whatever, but
Yeah.
excellent. Well, listen, thank you very much. If anybody has
bet.
anything else or not, we'll call it a day. Do we need to approve minutes? I'm sorry, David?
Jim, there's other matters on the agenda. I don't think we need to have Mr. Fink stay around if he wishes to, but we have other matters on the
Okay,
agenda.
thank you, Dave. Thank you, Robert. You're always
You
got my back.
guys have a good night.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Dave.
Thank you very much, Dave.
Sure.
Yeah, if you put the agenda up, Mr. Sulkus. Members' suggestions for proposed amendments.
Mr. Quish, I took my baseball cap off. I do have one that I think we should revisit if I can be heard.
Please do.
So I believe it was 2 years ago, we approved the issue of accessory apartments and the like, and our particular regulations set forth, and they had to be attached. I think that our next regulation or whatever is appropriate for council, so staff, excuse me, do that. We should do a little bit of a follow-up. In other words, how many applications have we received? How many are in the city now? And is this something we should reconsider for them being detached? Because that does have part of this affordable housing issue. It may or may not be a big one, but again, I don't know the answer. I'm just throwing this out that if we determine that it can be a structure that's not attached and affordable housing, does that go into our stock? Again, I don't have an answer for it, but I ask us to consider that as a discussion point coming up in the near future. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you, Robert. I think that's a good point. And David, if you would weigh in on that, just not necessarily right this minute, but that obviously it's up to us to amend that ordinance or that regulation if we collectively see fit, and to look into how that could benefit our goal to get some affordable housing. I know that Fairfield has did it a little bit different than we did. Now, again, there's a lot of property there with a lot of homeowners or whatever with more property, a lot of bigger zones, but it could be by zone, or it could be, I don't know. If you would put a little thought behind that, David, I'd appreciate it, and give us the report back to what would the implications be to a variety of ways to look at incorporating detached ADUs in difference to the one we just approved. And
would you want those detached ADUs to be affordable?
that could very well be a caveat, right? Wouldn't that have some symbiosis right there? It's by by law or by whatever, you can have an ADU in your own building, but if you want to have it attached, it must be affordable and remain affordable by 40 years or whatever it is. So that could be an interesting way to get us down the road in a couple ways.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just throwing it out there, because yeah, if we,
That's a good thought.
yeah, because we have, I mean, that I'm aware of, probably since last year, because I think we updated our regulations, last year. I want to say that we have built, I think at least there were 3 applications that I'm aware of for, ADUs within, the dwelling, that currently exists.
If you don't mind, because I'm in that side of the building, there's probably been 10 or 12 people that have approached, the zone, Stephen, asking for details about it. Most of them seem to be kind of what was designed, the seniors who are looking to get income from a unit within their home. But I'd say there's probably been maybe 7 or 8 since the regulation changed. What was interesting today, there was someone who came in with one of the old accessory in-law apartments, and this is the first one we've seen where this one was approved in the early, like 2002, under a special permit that's converting over to an ADU. So there's more awareness of it, and there seems to be more interest in it, but very much on a sort of low scale. Based, just on what we've seen in that side of the building.
So, I mean, at one point, there's maybe part of the goal to get more affordability is, more just outreach to let people know that there is that, and to make that a potential. If you have an ADU, and if you want to do an ADU, is there an easy button for them to say, yeah, I'm going to make it affordable and deed restrict it? So if that's not an easy button, maybe it should be. Then if there ends up being 50 or 100 throughout the city of ADUs, and they figure that they're only going to get so much anyway for rent, and they could make it affordable. So anyway, good. Thank you, Meg, and another bit of food for thought. Good point, Mr. Sadie. And David, if you would give us some input on that
Sure.
when you get it.
Yep. I'll talk to 2 different people in Fairfield now.
Yeah. Because I think I know that I have a project going that they want to do an ADU, and it's a bigger lot. I mean, it's obviously just a couple acres, or whatever, but they seem to be approved. So.
Yeah, I actually, I think I talked to their planner not too long ago. We were talking about this, and I had asked them about if they allowed separate ADUs, and and I'll double check. I want to say that they said yes, but they required a minimum of 1 acre to do a separate ADU.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'll double check all that for you.
Now, as far as this committee is concerned, do we feel that? So my inspiration from, I think it was Mark, that this discussion is better served by doing it at either every meeting or every other meeting, however that works out. I mean, if there's 5 public hearings, maybe we don't do it, but to have a section of every meeting where we discuss potential regulation changes and do some of the planning of the planning and zoning board, or do we feel that, and we could do both. We could do that on every meeting and still have a subcommittee that maybe takes the direction from the committee, the full committee, and drills down a little deeper, maybe once a month or once every 2 months or whatever. If we have a meeting if we have I don't know. I'm open to suggestions on how to do it. If we want to include make it exclusive that the entire board looks at everything, or make it a partnership where every meeting or every other meeting has a segment that looks towards the planning and potential regulation changes, and then still have the regulation subcommittee to drill down deeper. Does anybody have feelings on that they'd like to share?
So Chairman Quish, I think the original thought is a great idea. I have two concerns is that, the way that the subcommittee works now, we have 5 members, therefore our subcommittee has a quorum with 3. If we went to 6, then we'd have to have the whole board. And the question is that I think we should address is, this is a better format, that it's not a full public hearing, and we present to the full board a proposed regulation change or whatever we do as part of the regulation committee, and then it becomes a public hearing. So the point is, if we're trying to just work through things, we may have to be public hearings, and I think that should be addressed by Dave Sulkus. The second thing is that sometimes it appears, and I've been on this reg subcommittee for 5 or 6 years, and I know Brian's been on probably longer than me. Sometimes you get more done with less people. Again, doesn't mean either one is correct, but I think that I'm more concerned about having to have public hearings all the time, because that can slow down our business of not keeping the public in.
Right, so to be clear, I
Not
wasn't talking
letting-
about a public hearing, I was just having it on the agenda. So I think it's okay to have it on the agenda, maybe the first meeting of every month, and then have whatever the discussion is kick into a regulation subcommittee following week. I mean, I don't mind that. I just want it to be, I don't want it to be just my idea. I think that the idea that, because we had more interest in the subcommittee than we could permit because of the quorum rules, that I wanted to include everybody. So if we have a conversation in public as an agenda item, discussion of potential regulation changes, or however we want to name it, with the full board, and then whatever it comes out of the full board could then be filtered to a subcommittee, I'm okay with that also. I just don't want to exclude people, and I think our hands are handcuffed because the regulation subcommittee can't give everybody a chance to contribute. So I'm just trying to find a way to accommodate both. And I agree with your concern that too many cooks spoil the stew sometimes, but I kind of want to try to find both. Is anybody else has any brilliance they could help us out with?
I mean, if what I wonder is, I don't think anyone has ever been precluded from suggesting a regulation change if there was something that they thought needed to be addressed. Because they would either, I think, talk to you, Mr. Chair, and say, hey, this is something I'm concerned about. What do you think? And can you bring it to the committee? Or they've done it to me. It's like, oh, Dave, there's this issue. Maybe we need to change a regulation or something. What do you think? And can you bring it to the committee? I mean, I think that's sort of how things have sort of operated, up to now outside, when there were issues outside of the subcommittee. So I don't think anyone's voices are being, withheld or prevented. There's ways that people can get there's ways board members can get their concerns known and addressed. And my only words of caution is I don't, and this is one of the discussions I would have when I chat with the city attorney. Typically when you have a meeting, for the full board, we have a very specific agenda.
Yes, there's applicants.
Exactly, and because that's why you're there to take care of the applicants, and I don't know to what degree we can have a general agenda item that could take on any form in effect. It's like, general discussion of whatever board member wants to talk about tonight.
When we have that, it has to be a 2/3 majority at the meeting.
Well,
Um,
if you're adding an agenda item,
Exactly.
but that would be typically a very specific thing, and that's
Yeah.
my only.
Again, I'm feeling handcuffs on me and I don't like it. So
Uh-huh.
anyway, we'll talk it through.
Sure,
My instinct is that right now we're too exclusive and I want to open it up. So at this point, we won't act on it any further than
I'll get an answer for you. I mean, I obviously want to be able to give you good guidance and correct guidance, so I'll be chatting with the city attorney about that, obviously.
okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't want I don't want it to be the case that there's 10 members that want to be on the regulations subcommittee, but they can't weigh in because it's unless every regulations subcommittee we notice as a Zoom meeting. So whatever, you figure it out. But I don't want anyone excluded. I just don't want anyone excluded.
Which we could do. I mean, if you wanted to have special board meetings, we just have to advertise them, and anyone, because
But to Bob's point, we don't want just random,
Right.
fairly interested people. I don't know. It's difficult for me to go beyond the fact that I really do not want people excluded.
Right.
They're elected and they should have a voice. And I think that part of the only, outside of approving a CAM, where we make the most headway in making any impactful decisions on Milford is in this space right here, in saying, okay, we have regulations that are not functional and we can come up with a better idea. And I don't want to make that, exclusive. I want to make it inclusive. So if anyone has a better idea on how to do that, I'm happy it's a clam to go down that road. But for now, we will leave it, and we will, David, you and I, when we do our agenda meeting, we will put something on the agenda that the city attorney says is okay, and we'll go down that road to the point where we'll have an open discussion, and we will continue the general guidelines of the Wednesday in between the 2 Tuesday meetings will be a regulations subcommittee. We'll keep to that schedule at this point.
Okay.
And there may be no discussion at a particular meeting, but we can still take care of this business on this committee, and we just have to regulate it. We didn't have a problem tonight with more people wanting to attend than would be permitted. But so anyway, I appreciate all.
Mr. Chair, can I just throw out an idea?
Thank you, Meg. Please, I appreciate it.
I'm just thinking maybe one of the spots on the committee can be a rotational spot. Maybe somebody comes through in the meetings and it isn't an assigned spot.
That's a good idea. That's if we could figure that out, whether it's you have to acknowledge it like a couple days before, so that we know who, because if anyone could attend as long as David mutes them the same way he muted the members of the public. So only the people that are like alternates, like they have on the ZVA, so let's look into that. I really, 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 really don't want to exclude anybody that wants to put their effort into this. So if we can get along on that path, that'd be helpful. And I understand that 10 of us going, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this, let's do that. That's never gets anything done. So I appreciate that comment too, Mr. Sadly. Okay, do we have approval of the minutes from 1/24/24? Magic number.
So Mr. Collegian raised his hand.
Yes, I didn't see that. Brian, you're muted.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from 1/24/24.
I second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Seeing none. Move to the approval. The minutes are approved and adjournment is here. Thanks all for all your
Thank
effort.
you,
I
guys.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night, all.
Right.